My name is Allie Evans and I made the history of nail polish video. The original idea came about during the summer. I'm a senior and I was getting all kinds of college propaganda. I was getting like 5 things in the mail every day and we would just throw everything out. And so I thought that maybe it would be a good idea to use the paper that I was getting from that and turn it into some sort of project. I didn't really know what yet. And so I decided that I wanted to do a paper animation. I am a big nail polish enthusiast. I have lots and lots of nail polish. And so I thought that maybe something related to that would be a good idea. So I looked into the history of nail art. I researched it online. I looked at Mental Floss and Good Housekeeping and a couple other sites. And I found out that it has a pretty interesting history. I decided this seemed like it would be a pretty good project. I had a very full fall schedule. I did not have a whole lot of time to do a lot of extra things, so I decided that over Christmas break I was going to allot 5 full uninterrupted days to making this video happen. I started by writing out my script. I used Celtx to write my script and to help with storyboarding. And so once that was done, I just had to start making everything. And each piece of the animation was completely handmade by me, and it was a long process. By the end of those 5 days, I had gotten through the title, and I'd gotten through like half of the first scene. So by that point, I was like, oh dear. I did not leave enough time for this. Like, I should have been working on this like a long time ago. At that point, I was already back in school, and so I was able to spend like an hour or 2 every night just trying to get through some more of it. Things like the tree from the China scene, like organic kind of things, just take so long to make. And also the letters for the title. If you look at the actual nail polish letters, they're actually made up of like 2 different types of paper. Each one of those had to be cut out and glued together, and you know, it was just a very tedious and long process to get everything made. About 2 weeks before the deadline, I was still making my stuff, and I was like, oh, this is not particularly good. I started to crank up production. I was trying to work more and more on it, but then I was really lucky because we were going to be off for Martin Luther King Day, and then we're having a professional development day for teachers in Marion County. So I used those days completely dedicated for the animation. And then the snow fell. We got like 15 inches of snow here in Marion County, something like that. So it turned out that we were off the rest of the week. By around Thursday, I was getting close to being finished making everything. I know, like, I'm cutting this so short, but I never expected for it to take this long. One of the first things I did right after I wrote out my script was record the audio, because everything that I was doing was based on time. I used the Rode NTG1 and the Zoom H4n to record my voice. And then whenever it actually came time for shooting, I would take the audio that I used for my final take, and I went through, and if you have 3 seconds worth of video, you're gonna have 36 frames. So I went through and counted 36 frames. I did that for the whole video. By Thursday, we're getting really close to shooting. The setup for actually shooting it's pretty non-traditional. It's not a professional setup by any stretch of the imagination. What I used for my lighting, I had 2 just regular lamps, and I had put white paper underneath them for diffusion. I also had, like, it's my grandparents. It's like a 70-year-old light thing. It has 4 lights. It was actually used to film movies indoors back, you know, 70 years ago, back whenever film was a thing. And so I used those because they were extremely bright. I tried to diffuse those out a little bit. There was a window right beside the table where I'd be shooting. I put up black paper all over that because I knew I was going to be shooting all day and night, because by this point, the week that we were off, I was working 10 to 14 hours on it easily every day. And so I knew that there was going to be a lot of lighting changes. I didn't want that to affect the video at all. Then I also have a overhead rig that my dad made It's made of 2 speaker stands and this metal extrusion stuff, and then the camera is mounted where it shoots straight over the table. Camera I used was the Canon T4i with an 18 to 35mm lens, and one of the most helpful things I had was Bell wireless shutter release. Allowed me to have just a remote and be able to trigger the shutter, so that way I didn't have to stand up every time and touch the camera and move the camera every time I wanted to take a picture. Shooting was extremely long and tiring and of course tedious, as this whole project has been. Like I said, 10 to 14 hour days every day. I had a plan, of course, because I had to make everything, but there were some things that were more improvised. The end of the video, a lot of that I didn't really have planned out very well. I knew I had some idea, of course, what I wanted to do, but it wasn't planned out as well as the rest of it. Like my painted fingernails, that was kind of a last minute thing. I just kind of thought, I was like, my name will fit on my nails. I should put that in the credits. There were a lot of hiccups during shooting. One of it, which was the car sequence. I knew that I wanted the Ford to go, I wanted it to look like it was moving, I wanted it to look like it was driving, but I hadn't really considered how I was going to be doing this. So in order for the car to move, I have started out with like one really big piece of this kind of multi-colored paper. So what I ended up doing was I traced around the template. I'll cut off a yellow line, and then I'll cut this little yellow line out right here, and then I'll tape it onto the next one. And that's how I get to move without it going over the edge of the nail polish bottle. That one I did not think I was ever going to get through. It took like 4 or 5 hours to shoot. We have a very exciting update. It's currently 1:14 a.m. and we have one last piece to cut out on the car driving in the bottle. And then I had a big screw up at 3 in the morning. Alright, have a quick update. It is 1:50 a.m. on Sunday morning before the deadline. I just had a bit of a nightmare situation. I'm getting ready to take the picture. I realized that it's brighter. It's a lot brighter than it has been thus far. My finger, I was taking a picture, checking something, switched the camera from manual to aperture priority, which means that my settings are changed. Turns out this did not just occur in the 1990s, it actually happened in the 1970s. I think I have to go back and shoot it again. It's currently 3:07 a.m. I went back and looked at the footage, and I'm going back to the 1970s to reshoot the French manicure scene. I want it done today. So hopefully when I see you next, it'll be done. We have another update. 3:17. The battery just died. Alright, it is 3:50 Sunday morning. We're deadline. Just finally got back to the 90s. Everything corrected, reshot correctly at the correct exposure. So back on forward. Also throughout the whole thing, there were grids on the camera. And so like on the Technicolor scene, I was actually taking off the words Technicolor every time that I was shooting. And so I had to use that grid. That was the only thing I had to make sure that I was lined up in the same place every time. If you look, it doesn't really, like obviously you can tell that it's moving a little bit, but it looks like it's relatively in the same place. And that was all just done by hand, just looking at the grid and trying to figure out how exactly it goes. And then at the end, whenever I was shooting, I said that it was somewhat improvised, and it was. But one of the things that I had decided that I wanted to do was I didn't want it to be confined to a bottle, because I was talking about the present instead of the past, and so I wanted to, at least the present for this year, because you know, it's not really written down as history yet. So I wanted just to kind of leave that symbolically open to whatever happens in 2016. Just got done filming all portions. It's done. About 90% of my time was spent pre-production, making everything and getting everything ready to shoot. And so the last 10%, I guess, would be actually shooting and post-production. As you would imagine, there wasn't a whole lot of work done in post-production, but I always made sure whenever I was shooting that I had more frames than what I needed. That way I was always cutting instead of having to reuse frames. So I used Adobe Premiere Pro for editing and getting my audio and everything lined up. And I also use Adobe Audition to help enhance my voice a little bit, make it sound a little bit better, and to cut the script together correctly. And I think that was mainly it on post-production. Then I just had to export it and get it to YouTube. And that was a very exciting day. Anyway, I think that is the full process of how I made History of Nail Polish video. It's about a month in the making, but I'm really glad with the way it turned out. It looks really good, and I hope that you enjoyed it too.